Like, did the internet give us another day to do our thing? It looks like the internet's saying yes. It looks like, yeah, look at that. Look at that. That's beautiful. Let's make sure the YouTube's awake. The YouTube's awake. We're doing it. We are doing it one more time. Maybe even more than that. What's up, everybody? Good afternoon, good evening, good day, good tomorrow if you're in the future, like maybe you're in Australia or something. How's the future? I'm glad we made it another day. This is Get Your News On with Ron. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I hope all your dreams came true this weekend. All of them. If you have one, I hope you crushed it. Before we bring in today's guest, let me give a shout out to everyone who makes this show possible. First of all, our friends over at ZT.com, ZHITEA.com. Their tea kind of rules. I just got a new shipment from them, and all my favorite teas are present and accounted for. Got some amazing black teas, some good greens. You guys know black tea is my favorite. It has the most, packs the most punch, but you can get their tea wholesale now. And a friend of the show, Jeffrey, is the proprietor over at ZT. Do check out their tea. And maybe we're going to get a limited edition Ron Placone tea at some point. Maybe that's going to happen. Let's keep our fingers crossed. But check them out. Show them some love. ZT.com, ZHITEA.com. Their tea kind of rules. Also, our friends over at Trendy as Dabbers. They make CBD pain oil that you can rub on your joints. I put it on my neck, and it does wonders. You guys know I was in a bad car accident in 2013. My neck will never be the same. I accept that. But this pain oil has done wonders for it. So check them out on the web over at Trendy as Dabbers. That's DABBERS. Check them out. They make an amazing product. And thank you for the recent swag, and the guitar picks were a lovely, lovely touch. I got a big kick out of it. Thank you for that. And Civvy app, CIVVY app.com. It's an app that compartmentalizes civic issues for you. It also tells you how compatible you are with different politicians. You just answer questions based on your political ideology. It tells you who you're compatible with. Hey, turns out I'm not really compatible with anyone. If this was a dating app, I'd be completely alone. Like I'm barely compatible with anybody based on this app, which I was like, that's fine. I can accept that. So it's a cool app. It compartmentalizes information for you. And it's trying to be a hub for independent news and media. There's a part on the app where you can see news from different viewpoints and different segments and different issues. And it includes a bunch of content creators, including yours truly. You can find some Get Your News On with Ron clips over on the Civvy app. It's a cool experiment. CivvyApp.com, CIVVY app.com. And guys, I'm talking about topical CBD, but some of you are like, well, Ron, what about the stuff that you can take, that you can drink? You got anything for me there? Actually, I do. Friend of the show, RareNaturalsCBD.com. That's Rare Naturals with an S, CBD.com. You can get a bottle of their CBD oil. You can put it in your drink, put a couple drops in your drink. You can put it under your tongue. You could probably even take it rectally if you want to. No judgment here. Do it however you want. No judgment. And it's relaxing. It's soothing. It's a good thing to calm you down after a big workout. It's just all natural CBD oil that is meant for you to digest. And check it out. If you go to the website, rarenaturalscbd.com, you can use the promo code Lucy, Lucy, uppercase, lowercase, doesn't matter. But use the promo code Lucy for 30% off at checkout. There you go. You can get a nice bottle of CBD. Put it in your drink. It'll last you a long time, and you can get 30% off. Just use the promo code Lucy at checkout. That website again, rarenaturalscbd.com. Rarenaturalscbd.com. Now, my guest today, we got a Music Monday guest, which I'm really excited about. I've been a fan of hers for a long time. We met a while ago at a NACA conference, but we're going to talk about that. First, let me bring her in. She is in a band called the Catcalls, which are amazing. The song of the day is the Catcalls, I Get High. It's a great track. It's their, I guess you would call it their single, and you can go check that out at thecatcallsband.com. And the song of the day, I Get High. Great blues rock, screaming leads, catchy chorus. It's a great song. I've been paying attention to her music for a long time. Please welcome to the show, Riley Ann of the Catcalls. And she's a lifelong progressive, too. And that's kind of, that played into how we met. Riley, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having
So,
me.
absolutely. So we met a while ago at a NACA conference. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what that is NACA stands for the National Association for Campus Activities. And if you go there as an artist and you showcase or you stand at a booth and you try to get colleges to book you. And we were both at the same conference. And you sat beside me, I think. It was a lunchtime, right?
Yeah, it was. And the thing with NACA is you just kind of go and you kind of throw yourself at all these college kids. It's a little weird, but you just hope that they book you and pay you money to come to their campus. And I
Right.
think I sat, I think I saw you at the table, and I was like, oh, he looks like a college kid that might be interested in my music.
You thought I was a college kid.
I did. And I was like, maybe he'll book me.
I don't know if
Uh,
I should be flattered or not. I don't know.
People thought I was a college kid too. Um, and then you ended up being a presenter, and then we just kind of hit it off and talked about politics and the end of the world type scenarios that was the dumpster fire of 2016 that just hasn't stopped burning. So here
Yeah.
we are.
Well, yeah, that was the thing. So a little more background for anyone who's not familiar with these conferences, which a lot of people aren't unless you do it. If you're over the age of 22, it can be, I mean, I've had a lot of fun at them. They are a lot of fun, but if you're over 22, they can be very lonely, where you're just kind of, you're standing at this booth, you're hoping they talk to you. And then you're just kind of like, what am I going to do now? Like what's, so it was cool to like meet a like-minded person and have somebody to like talk to, especially because they would have, I don't know what I forget the exact thing they were called, but basically they would have these periods where it was like open marketplace or something, where people would go around and you would basically stand there at your booth, hoping some college kid was like, "Oh yeah, I'm interested in you," and then if they're not, you're just standing there by yourself, contemplating life. And so it was nice to have like after those things, have someone to talk to be like, "How'd it go for you? Was it okay? How'd you?" Which we did, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that one I had some success, and I set up a nice little tour.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. That one was a fun one. Because it was Minneapolis, right?
Well, I think I met you at, yeah, I think there was like two Minneapolis ones in a row, maybe. I
Okay.
don't know, because I met you at one, and then I think I saw you again at the other. I think I saw you 2 years in a row.
Was it a two?
I
Okay.
think so.
Because I stopped doing it in like 2017. And I mean, I still do some colleges, but I don't do the NACA thing anymore. And yeah, I remember when we met and started talking, it was one of those things when you still had to look over your shoulder if you wanted to be like, the DNC is a really big freaking problem. Like you had to look over your shoulder to make sure it was safe. So it was like meeting a like-minded person. It's like finding out that you're both into the same obscure band. You
Yeah.
know, like it's just like, oh, you have a problem with the duopoly too. Oh man, you're a lefty too. I feel like I'm in a safe space. You realize Trump is just the symptom of a much bigger problem. Whoa. All right. And I don't know how we found that out exactly. Like I don't remember how it came up in our discussion, but it did.
Well, I think you were sharing like that you did a lot of political things in your stand-up, and I was like, whoa, you must have some really right material right now because it's a disaster. And then we just kind of went from there.
Okay. All right. Cool. Well, yeah, I'll take that. That
Yeah,
makes sense.
so it all worked out. I mean,
So at that point in time, were you like that was when you were just starting the Catcalls? You had a different project at that point, right?
that was actually a totally different project. Because
Okay.
like the first year I toured as a one-woman band with like live looping and like 17 different instruments. And then the following year I had an old time like folky duo called the Darling Ravens. And then after that, a different year, the next year, which I didn't see you at, I brought my blues rock band, the Catcalls, when they were pretty new. So
Because
kind
you're a
of,
multi-instrumentalist.
yeah.
What all do you play?
Oh my God. Mostly what I perform on is for the Catcalls, I play electric guitar, sometimes acoustic for lighter gigs, and sing. And then the Darling Ravens, I played fiddle, banjo, guitar, mandolin. So, more the folky instruments, but I teach a lot of instruments too. Like I teach, ukulele and piano and like all kinds of stuff. Saxophone. I triple majored in college because I'm an idiot. And one of my majors was saxophone performance, just for fun. Because
what were the other two?
It was English education. And then I did an interdisciplinary middle school degree called middle level education with 2 different like primary emphases and also secondary emphases.
So music and education, you were like, look, I'm going to college and I want a license to make money when I'm done with this thing. So I am picking the 2 most lucrative fields in the world, music.
Yeah. Well, I was mainly intending on being a teacher in the public schools with like language arts or English. And I actually did teach in the public schools for 6 years. I taught high school English in the Midwest before I moved out to Colorado.
What brought you to Colorado?
I came here in college.
Where was college?
College was in Wisconsin.
Okay. And
I had this really cool geography teacher. He taught cultural and physical geography. And he taught the summer class it was a 3-week camping trip in the summer where you stay in national and state parks. And at like 23 years old or whatever I was, I had never been to a national park before. My family just didn't do that. Both of my parents, had home businesses and we didn't go on vacations. They just kind of stayed home and worked and, so it was totally eye-opening we packed up 2 giant vans and stayed at like, we went as far as like Yosemite and the Grand Canyon and Zion National Park. I'd never walked in a national park before. I was remembered in elementary school, people coming back with postcards like, we went to the Grand Canyon. I was like, looks like a big hole. Cool. It's like, you just don't get it.
Technically it is, but it's a really cool big hole. Like
it is for sure. So, and I just fell in love with Colorado, and I had one of those, in life, sometimes you have those like moments of clarity where, at like 23, we were in Colorado and Rocky Mountain National Park and everything. And I just remember having this feeling. I was like, I'm going to move here someday. I don't know when it's going to be. I don't know how or why, but I'm going to end up here. And then like almost a decade later, I moved to Colorado.
It's hard not to fall in love with that place. I mean, I love Colorado is one of my favorite places to visit. It's one of my favorite places. I love performing in Colorado. I don't get to super often because it's not near a lot of other stuff. But when I do go, I like it a lot. And yeah, it's one of those places where it just Colorado is one of those areas where when you go there, it immediately feels familiar. And like, you can't really put into words why exactly. It just does. Like the first time I ever stepped foot in Colorado, I felt like I'd been there like my whole life. You know what I mean? Like I felt like I come here every year, and it's like, no, you've never been here before. And my favorite airport in the country, Colorado Springs.
Really?
Yes. Have you ever been?
No, I go to DIA.
That's such a lame question to ask. Have you ever been to the Colorado Springs airport? Oh, we gotta do dinner sometime. It's awesome. But no, like the Colorado Springs airport. So it is like 8 gates. Like it's like just this. And I used to go when I was still based in like the Midwest. Like I lived in Nashville for a while, and I lived in Pittsburgh for a while. And I was on the road. Whenever I would do the Southwest, usually Colorado was kind of like my hub, and I'd go and I'd like do, clubs in the Southwest, like a lot of like casinos in the deserts and stuff. And I would always fly into Colorado Springs because it was always like way cheaper than Denver for whatever reason. Like it was just cheaper to fly in there, even from like the Midwest, and it was cheaper to rent a car from there. So I would always fly into Colorado Springs, and sometimes I would have like flights at like random times. So I would just have a lot of time to kill at that airport waiting to go home. And they had a really killer Wi-Fi. And this was, a few years back when it wasn't as common to have good Wi-Fi at the airport or even free Wi-Fi at the airport, but they had like really good Wi-Fi that was free. and they had sand art everywhere, like just 8 gates and sand art exhibits, and like good Wi-Fi and a couple places to eat. And it's like, this is a great airport.
That's hilarious because like Colorado Springs has such a huge military presence that it's known for being like this super concentrated Republican hub in Colorado.
Really?
Like it's probably cheap because nobody wants to go there.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I've only ever done like the fun stuff. Like I mean, I went to Garden of the Gods.
Oh yeah.
And Pikes Peak. And that's it. That's all I've ever done in Colorado. And in fact, now that you mention it, I don't think I've ever performed in Colorado Springs. I mean, they have one club out there, and I did like a spot there, but then like we just never, like I got offered a week out of it, but it didn't work out for the routing. So I said, no, that week's not going to work. And we pick a different one. And then we just never, the stars never aligned on us picking a different one. But yeah, so I've never even really performed there.
Well, if you want to perform there, I'll help you set up a show. I'll meet you at the airport so we can have dinner because I'm sure I've eaten at worse places, and then we can go to the show.
It'll be such an underwhelming thing. I'll be like, Riley, this freaking airport, isn't it? Check your email. See how fast it goes. It's going to be awesome. It's going to change your life. It's going to change your life.
I love it.
Something. Tweet it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, no, but I've never actually, you're out of Fort Collins. I've actually never been to Fort Collins.
Oh,
that's high on my list.
Yeah, let's make that happen. We'll do like a whole Colorado tour.
I'd love that. Yeah. I mean, I love it out there. I have a friend. Well, she used to live in Grand Junction. She has since, her and her husband have moved to Salt Lake, but they lived in Grand Junction for a long time. And yeah, like it's just so amazing because like 10 feet from their house was like this huge ridge that you could just hike at. And it was huge. And it's just like, that's their backyard.
Yeah.
It's like when you live near the ocean or something, but it's like, this is your ocean, it's just like, oh yeah, like right here is this amazing thing that people come from all over the world to experience. And I can just hike here whenever I want. And that's part of the reason I live here, because that's a special thing.
Totally. I think the mountains are so powerful. And that's actually what made me fall in love with Colorado. Is I remember on that like 3-week camping trip, we were on I-25. We were heading, through Colorado and up to Rocky Mountain National Park. And as soon as the mountain range came up over the horizon, I just felt my stomach like come up into my chest. Mm-hmm. And it was like such a powerful feeling because I'd never seen mountains before.
Oh, and wow.
And it just like, whoa, it's just
and this was like totally, in your early, you were early 20s.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I had just never seen mountains before. And that's when I had that thought of like, I'm going to move here. It wasn't like, oh, I wish I could live here. It was just like a very matter of fact thought, like, I'm going to move here. Like, this is just meant to happen. I generally don't think of things in terms of like these like existential, like meant to be things or whatever. But like, that was one of the things where I'm like, I'm meant to live here and somehow I'm going to get there. I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but it's going to happen.
What was the transitionary period then? How long did it take before you got there from the mountain experience?
It was, I moved out here when I was 30. Okay. So it was like 7 years later. Mm-hmm. And it was just kind of this like crazy thing. I was like really burnt out on teaching. I met a guy, and apparently this is like a common thing. If you meet people from Colorado, it's like, oh, you meet a guy, he has a Subaru, and then you move in together, then you break up and you stay living together because it's too expensive to get your own place. So that's what happened, except he didn't have a Subaru. He had a Toyota Corolla, same difference. And he's like, oh yeah, you should just come move to Colorado. It's a great music scene, because that was a time when I was really burnt out teaching. I don't know if you know much about teaching, but it's a lot of work. And that was shortly after the time that Scott Walker became governor of Wisconsin and was shutting down teachers unions, setting a precedent to do that across the country. And there was just a lot that was happening in the news with a narrative about our public schools, about our teachers. My workload was just this constant thing. And I was balancing that with like, I had an all-female folk band back in the Midwest called the Matriarchs. And we were gigging like 2, 3, 4 times every weekend. And then I would go teach for 5 days, and I always had a stack of essays to be grading and annotating for my students. And I was just like tearing my hair out. And I just wanted to do music full time. And here I met this guy that was living for free in his grandpa's basement. And he's like, you should move out here. It's a great thing. And I'm like, okay, we got this new relationship. And
come to grandpa's basement.
Yeah.
I talked to grandpa. There's room. Did you go to grandpa's basement?
Yeah, I lived in grandpa's basement. It was like kind of like half finished, half unfinished.
Was grandpa a cool guy? Like, was he?
He's super sweet. I mean, he was like 93 at the time. And, just like kind of, he's 93. It's like just a sweet,
like, good
sweet
job,
man.
grandson. Good going.
Yeah, totally.
Nice.
And I don't know if you've ever had like a long distance relationship where you're living 1,000 miles apart and then you move into your partner's unfinished basement of his grandpa's house, but that's a lot different.
I've never had that specifically. No,
I don't recommend it. So I mean, we're still friends, and we still have respect for each other, but it was just not really meant to be. So that was in Boulder, and I had no idea what that meant of living rent free in Boulder, Colorado. But wow, did I figure that out pretty fast. So now I live in Fort Collins, and yeah, it's good. Colorado's great. It's a great community.
I agree. So here's somewhere we're going to go for Music Monday. Now, we're both, I mean, we were talking about this off mic, how much it's such a bummer amidst this pandemic to not be able to play live, or very limited. I mean, I know like in your case with music, there's some like outdoor things you can still kind of do. Comedy doesn't really have that. I mean, it does a little bit, but usually comedy's pretty much an indoor thing, and that's not really happening right now. And it's a bummer. But the other thing that I think we can both recognize is that if there's any group of people that never gets screwed over and always gets treated fairly, it's artists. I mean, always, especially musicians. Musicians have always been treated right. You never hear stories where they get screwed over beyond comprehension, ever. I mean, especially, even back in the day, all those blues artists, they were compensated completely fairly for the songs they wrote. They were
especially the black artists. Yeah, especially the black artists that were covered by white artists. Like,
oh yeah,
you never heard of anyone getting screwed over in that.
No one ever got screwed over. Watch someone take this clip completely out of context and share it, like some like fringe right wing blog. Like, see, they're telling the truth. It never happened.
We need like a sarcasm flashing button. Be like, no, we are not whitewashing history. It was actually really bad and still is.
It was really, oh man, since we brought up college, when I was in college, I went to Indiana University, and they have they were like the, I believe they were the originators of like the rock history department, or one of the originators of that sort of thing. And there was this guy every Tuesday, he would show these blues documentaries about some of the like original blues guys. And it was so cool because he I think there were kids like they'd bring in like a flask or something, and he didn't care as long as you were on the DL about it. And it was just chill. You just watch these blues documentaries, and they were so sad though, because it was you would see footage from I guess it would have been, I don't know what decade it would have been exactly, but it was like somewhat recent, comparatively speaking, to when the songs were released, of, like Big Boy Crudup and people like that still working on a farm because they were never given a dime for the songs they wrote. And you just see them and they're just like, how many songs do I need to write before I don't have to do this? And it's like, well, you shouldn't have had to do this for years. Like millions have been made off of your music, and you've not. It's just, it is nothing short of criminal what happened. And the people who were responsible for that, I think should be in prison for what they did. But anyway, so here's an example where they're going against the grain and actually screwing over these artists. Check this out. This is from Rolling Stone. Live Nation wants artists to take pay cuts and cancellation burdens for shows in 2021. So there's still no telling when music venues will be able to reopen their doors to large crowds of concert goers. Live Nation, they want to put some of this uncertainty on the artist. So here's some of the things they want to do. Here, let's see. Let's get down to the meat of it. Okay, so cancellation due to poor sales. If a show is canceled due to poor ticket sales, the artists only get 25% of the guarantee as opposed to all. Now, here's an interesting part. Cancellation by artist. Now, keep in mind, we're amidst a pandemic. If an artist cancels his performance in breach of the agreement, the artist will pay the promoter 2 times the artist's fee. If the promoter, here's another one, inability to use full capacity of the venue. If the promoter, either because of orders of the venue or any governmental entity, is not permitted to use the full capacity of the venue, then the promoter may terminate the agreement and artists will refund any money previously paid. So if a promoter decides we don't want to do this because of, because of it's not full capacity, even though we knew this ahead of time, we're still just pulling the plug because we feel like it, you don't get any money. But, if you have to cancel because, hey, we're amidst a pandemic and I have to cancel for whatever reason, you have to pay 2 times the artist's fee. It's like these institutions are realizing that they're suffering and they're saying, who can we gouge? We have to gouge somebody because at the end of the day, we're basically middlemen. And I'm not saying that concert promotion isn't a line of work. Of course it is. And there are some people who do it damn well. I'm not trying to, write off that line of work by any means. But yeah, this sucks. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, first of all, I am not surprised because people in these types of positions generally look to themselves first, whether you're talking about the music industry or whether you're talking about, the CEO of Walmart. And actually, I just looked up the CEO, Michael Rapino of the Live Nation. His salary is $14,400,000. Their CFO,
Of course it is.
It's almost $2 million. General counsel and secretary is like over $1.5 million. Their accounting officers like just over half, just over 500,000. And it's like, they never take the cuts from the top down to support the music industry. Cause I think they take musicians and the whole industry for granted. They say, well, we're going to save ourselves. If you're not okay with that, we're going to book someone else. And we've seen this historically as like, I have friends they've been gigging since like the 70s and they'll say, yeah, musicians are the one, guarantees for bands are the one thing that hasn't changed since the 70s or it's gotten worse.
Yeah. Well, comedy's the same way. Like the pay scale has literally gone down numerically from the 80s until now. And there's a variety of reasons for it. Now, what's interesting is that there is some unionization in the music world. There's none whatsoever in the comedy world. But, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you would know more than me in this, but like that unionization typically doesn't go into, somebody playing songs at a venue, especially if it's original music. Is that correct?
Well, I think I haven't, this is kind of embarrassing because I'm a staunch supporter of unions and I was part of my teachers union. I haven't actually joined the musicians union. They do protect you at any level, but you have the most to be protected by when you are, in the higher thresholds of the industry. And for me, I feel like what I'm making financially, I don't have that much to protect. And therefore it would like cost me more than I would be protecting through that. Now they do, if I were to sign up as, or join a musicians union, they would do things like protecting a contract. If I work out a contract with someone, if they breach that contract, I can go to my union for representation and then they could guarantee that the venue follows that contract. So I think there is protection. But I think, it doesn't necessarily make sense for me right now to be part of the union.
Well, do you know if Do you know if there's any like preemptive measures in musicians union? And it's okay if you don't, but like would they, for an instance like this, like getting back to like this piece of news, would they step in and be like, these agreements are complete bullshit. You're trying to take advantage of us during a pandemic. We're all suffering together. You're not going to make us suffer more. We realize, because I mean, that's my initial response to this. Like, look, Live Nation and every other promoter out there, we realize the pandemic's not your fault, but you're not going to take it out on us. Like, that's not fair. Like, you don't get to take it out on the artist. And to me, that's what this is. This is taking it out on the artist, where it's like, we gotta collect the nickels and dimes somewhere. And at this point, like, the artist is the only person we have left, because, we make these agreements. We want to see profit from every agreement. And right now, because of this pandemic, well, the only agreements we can be making is with the artist. Hey, we're going to book you for April 2021. We're going to book you for, October, hoping it's down by then. But by the way, if it isn't, if you cancel, screw you, give us money. If we cancel, you ain't getting a dime.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is where that comes in of like, do you have union representation? Like, I could definitely see them intervening if you have specific artists that have issues with the contract. I could also see like household names, like if Taylor Swift is going to play, Red Rocks or whatever, or the Pepsi Center or whatever, I could see she's going to have like a really powerful team of people behind her. But I think what we're going to see is some of the people that are, again, in like the higher echelons of the music industry are going to have a team of people that are capable of negotiating better terms. I think the mid-level and lower people in the lower echelons are really going to be struggling, that they're not going to have as much clout to work with. They're not going to have the representation behind them. And Live Nation is going to be like, well, if you don't want to do it, we're going to choose that other person. And that's kind of what we saw with the kind of either staying the same or like declining rates of like, the entertainment industry is, well, if you don't take the gig, someone else will, they'll undercut you and they'll do it for less. And that becomes kind of the status quo for what's expected of artists, of that venue, of that town, of that general community, locally, regionally, even on a national level. So I think.
No, go ahead.
Oh, so I think we're going to see that as like a continuation of this decline, and actually exponentially speeding up that process because of the pandemic, because Live Nation isn't going to want to take it out of their own pockets. And I think what that's going to do is long-term really hurt the music industry and music community.
So what you brought up too, that I wanted to also mention, you talk about like, well, if it's Taylor Swift and if it isn't that, I feel like that's something I would like to see happen more. Will artists that have the power and the platform speak out about stuff like this? And I'm not implying like none do, because some do. But I think like something like this, I think, could be stopped if artists with the biggest platforms said, no, you can't do this. You can't do this. We're not working with you if you do this.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And I'm not sure if that's going to happen and to what extent. I think a lot of people are scared. I think people like Taylor Swift are scared of what that's going to mean for their income too. And it really is going to take people taking a stand for everyone that we have seen in so many different aspects of society. It really takes taking a stand for everyone, for the betterment of everyone, rather than just working out your individual contract for your self-interest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you see stuff like when there's efforts made online, like sometimes like you see some things that kind of work out. Like whenever like I know like musicians boycotted a thing Amazon was doing and it ended up working out. I forget all the details, but it was like some kind of like festival Amazon was trying to pull off, and I think like Ice was incorporated with it, and a bunch of musicians were just like, nope, and so they ended up having to scrap it. So it's like, I think when musicians and other artists too, like really mobilize, and it's like, someone at my level is not doing anything with Live Nation. Someone at your level is well, I guess in music you might be, but in comedy at my level it's just not going to happen. But in Live Nation, like, you know, because there's a lot, like you guys do a lot of festivals and stuff like that.
Yeah, there are a lot of smaller, like more community or regional festivals. I haven't personally worked with Live Nation, but they have been buying up and like working out contracts with a lot of the what used to be independent venues in Denver. So I have actually
Does that
been
scare
seeing that
you?
impact more. Oh, totally. A lot of people are really freaked out by that.
Because I mean, I feel like, and I want your take on this, and this kind of, you know, kind of gets into like a different territory a little bit, but still connected to what we're talking about. I feel like the concept of the folk club is not non-existent anymore. It's still out there, but you really have to dig for it, and you really have to find it, and you really have to like just go out of your way to hold on to it. And I don't even mean just folk club, but even like, you know, like where I live, a lot of like the punk rock bars I go out of my way to make sure I go there because I really don't want this to go away. And I'm not sure if that's still a common thing. You know what I mean? Because like I'll even notice a lot of times the people there are my age and older. Not all the time, but you know, a lot of the times it's so like I kind of wonder if that sort of notion is going away, and you just sort of go where, oh, something cool is here, so I'm just randomly going here, and I know there's something cool I want to see, as opposed to a lot of cool stuff comes here, and I appreciate that. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah. Um, as far as my experience in Fort Collins, at least, like when I go to shows, I feel like I'm oftentimes the oldest person there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, there are some, you know, whether they're a dive bar, whether they're a club, whether they're whatever kind of venue that are just known for having great music or great shows or great whatever. A lot of the ones that I like the most have a lot of diversity. And so I'm having the problem that in town, even in Fort Collins, which is smaller than Denver, but definitely when I go to Denver, it's like, well, I want to go to all these, I want to go to, you know, 4 different shows and they're all happening at the same time. What 1 or 2 can I actually make it to? And it really depends on what they're getting that night, because they get such a vast variety. Whether one night they might have, you know, a hardcore punk show, the other night they might have like kind of experimental, like kind of dream surf pop, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's just one night they might have bluegrass. That's a huge thing in Colorado. And so depending what they get, that's what helps determine where I go. So I generally don't just show up somewhere. Now, when I do have people that are in from out of town and they're in Denver, I'll say, okay, well, my favorite venues to go to are, you know, the High Dive, the Larimer Lounge. If you want to go to a theater show, like check out the Bluebird Theater, the Gothic Theater, you know, it's like more intimate theater shows or whatever. But I feel like at least a lot of the venues here in Colorado get such a wide diversity of genres that I don't just blindly show up, you know. But
no.
yeah,
I know what you mean, and just to clarify a little bit, like when I say like folk club and punk bar and stuff like that, I don't literally mean those are the only genres that are permitted there. I just mean more in like the spirit of it, like where I live in Pasadena, there's a place called Old Town Pub, and it's like, you know, I mean, there's a lot of like punk rock decor on the walls and stuff like that, but they have all kinds of genres that play there. It's not like it's exclusive to one type of music. It's just like in spirit, I know that I'm going to appreciate what's going on there. You know, whether it be a singer-songwriter with an acoustic guitar, or whether it be like a Riot Girl night with a bunch of, you know, all-female punk bands, whether it be like kind of a jazzy blues quartet. And I'm mentioning all these because those are all things I've seen there recently. So, you know, like it's a broad range of things, but it kind of like I appreciate, you know, everything I see there and stuff like that. And it's that type of a spot.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that speaks volumes to the nature of independent venues. of collecting, different types of bands and performances that maybe cross different genres, but it's going to be good. Whether or not it's your taste is different.
Sure, of
And
course.
I think with Live Nation, as soon as you put some kind of corporate entity rather than the local people of an independent club, you're going to lose that local culture, and you're going to lose a lot of times diversity that way. Now, I do also have friends who, they have personal experience with feeling like it's white people booking shows of other white people performing, and a lot of white people going to those shows, and that in itself is problematic. So I think it's good to have people who are really conscious of like, who are they putting in these positions of booking? What are they looking for? How can we support, really diverse groups, not just by genre, but also by their, sexual orientations and their ethnicities and everything like that. And again, as soon as you start like kind of bottlenecking everything towards like a more corporate model, I think we're going to start losing that even more.
Yeah. Oh, that bums me out.
Me too.
Really bums me out. Because and it seems like a lot of like the independent places, at least in my experience, it's not like typically these days, it's not like there's just one sole booker who is like the gatekeeper. And I know in some places that's not the case. That still is the model. But like, it seems like a lot of times it's like, we have this guy who specializes on acoustic Mondays. And then we have this person who specializes on this night that specializes in this, to try to kind of get that diversity and preserve it, like what you're saying.
Yeah, totally.
So I want to go here next. This is kind of fun since we naturally brought up unions. This is something Facebook is doing. Now, Riley, I told you this off mic, but I'll say it on too. I saw you reminded me that I really need to up my Instagram game. You're crushing it on Instagram. You made a promo for this. You're crushing it on the Instagram. I am lame on Instagram. I don't take good pictures. I'm not good with the live thing, as you can tell, because I just described it as the live thing. And like Twitter is usually my mode of my preferred mode. But you've reminded me I need to up my Instagram game. And here's something that pertains to Facebook. So Facebook pitched a new tool allowing employers to suppress words like unionize in workplace chat product. So
Ooh.
Yeah, no kidding. So Facebook Workplace is a thing now. The company debuted features for Facebook Workplace, which is an intranet-style chat and office collaboration product similar to Slack. So it's all just going to be on Facebook now. Now your work life is also going to be on Facebook. On Facebook Workplace, employees see a stream of content similar to a news feed with automatically generated trending topics based on what people are posting about. This is Aldous Huxley wrote about all this, by the way, everybody. He wrote about all this in Brave New World, and that was supposed to be a warning, not an instruction manual. So one of the new tools debuted by Facebook allows administrators to remove and block certain trending topics among employees. I love how the article did this. The presentation discussed the benefits is in quotes, of content control, also in quotes. And it offered one example of a topic employers might find it useful to blacklist: the word unionize. Could you imagine being at this presentation? Like, could you imagine like a Facebook presenter just like, yeah, so it's like, if you want to use our Facebook Workplace, there's certain words you can block out, like unionize. And it's like, I think I see your horns and your freaking tail, dude.
Yeah.
You got to hide that better.
Well, and like, on one hand, it's disgusting and it's shocking, but on the other hand, it's like, are we surprised? I mean, this is the company that funded a lot of money for Donald Trump's campaign in 2016. And I don't know what they've given since 2016, but like, I mean, Aldous Huxley is perfect. Like, Facebook is kind of like our Soma, right? It like makes us feel good to like share pictures of dogs and, what other the things people like, and, memes and stuff. But it's like, Facebook was designed and has continued to be like a data mining product.
Well, that's what it was meant for.
Exactly.
That's
That's
where
what
they make
I'm
their
saying.
money. Like, you're the product.
Exactly. And it's like, they are a corporate entity. They didn't do this out of the goodness of their hearts. Like, we just wanted you to feel connected. And like all of those Facebook ads about like feeling connected and all of these things to make us feel good are like just another part of their branding of making us feel a certain way and feel good about using it. It's like our Soma, right? And it's like, that's not really what it's for. It's like they've been mining our data, selling it to people, selling ads to people to make a lot of money, giving it to Donald Trump. And this is where we're at. And it's like, of course they want to use that to pander to like corporate America, because that's what corporate America wants. We've seen that with Walmart. We've seen that with so many other organizations. Like, doesn't Whole Foods ban? I mean, Amazon bans it now. Whole Foods is owned by Amazon. And we see this trend of like, people don't want unions because unions give people power. Corporations don't want their people to have power. They want to retain it from the top down. And we really shouldn't be surprised by any of this.
Right. Yeah. I mean, none of this is surprising. And since you appreciated the Huxley reference, you really just like my nerd gasket is totally off now. So it's just like I am going to drive this episode into a dismount of obscurity. But have you ever read the book Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman?
No.
You'll love it. You got to read it. But so a premise that they introduce at the very beginning of the book is they're just like, people speculate who's right, Aldous Huxley or George Orwell. Like, are we in 1984 or are we in Amusing Ourselves to Death? And I won't go into like what he says about the question, because that's, part of the fun of reading the book. But like, my answer to that question is like, we're in both. Like we've made both a reality, because it's like, this is Aldous Huxley right here, but you see tons of examples of George Orwell in our life all the time. I mean, you see tons of Orwellian stuff, even just by Facebook. We can just stay on Facebook. This is an Aldous Huxley example on Facebook, where it's like, this is your Soma. But Facebook is also, in a very George Orwell fashion, taking it upon itself to fact check what is and isn't news and tell you what is and isn't truth. And it's like, when you kind of open that Pandora's box and you realize, okay, we're giving power to a bunch of people at Silicon Valley who have no qualifications to make these determinations for us. These are not constitutional lawyers. These are not First Amendment specialists. These are just programmers who are going to do what Mark Zuckerberg tells them. And who is Mark Zuckerberg going to listen to? Whoever's cutting him the fattest check, which are very high profile political people, which are very advertisers and other types of people who have no business telling us what we should and shouldn't be seeing or not seeing.
Yeah, I agree. And at the same time, if we're going down that dystopian rabbit hole of literature, it's like, you've got Fahrenheit 451, where people like don't read shit. When they do read stuff, they read what they want. We do have a problem with fake news. However, that term has been coined by Donald Trump supporters of anything they don't like. They can just write off and be like, nope, that's fake news. I'm gonna live in my little echo chamber of like conservative media and just believe what I want. And it's terrifying, because when you do let those floodgates be open for free speech, at the same time, one of the results of that is also that there is fake news that is changing how people perceive reality. There are still people that think COVID-19 is a hoax, and there's still people like refusing to wear masks in public and, calling people.
But that's because they're
doing that.
That's because they're so cool.
Oh, well, duh. And they're just so much smarter than us.
They're just so cool and so smart. And it's very tough too. You're just like, hey, I know we were put under martial law and I did absolutely nothing. But I'm not wearing a mask. I'll show you authority.
Totally.
If you put me under martial law, I'll say, well, they had a good reason for doing it. That's okay. But tell me I have to wear a mask. Well, I will stand up. Don't expect me to be considerate of other people. I will not stand for this.
Yeah, totally.
No, I'm with you. I mean, the thing is, though, since the advent of this country as we know it, we've had insane amounts of like yellow journalism and just ridiculous stuff that was passed off as true. I mean, even back in the day when we had a much healthier media structure than we do now, where we had like newspapers that were distributed, that were like written by actual socialists and stuff like that. And those ideas were disseminated and people read different points of view. You still had this ridiculous problem with fake news and yellow journalism. It's just, they kind of decided, and I think it was the right decision, like, hey, the best solution to bad speech is good speech and better speech, and combat it the best you can. Having entities that have no business determining what is or isn't real is not going to help the problem. It's actually going to make it worse. It's like the equivalent of like, hey, we have this like rotting tree. Let's burn down the forest.
Yeah.
It's like, no, let's plant better trees.
Yeah, for sure. No, and I get that. And I'm not saying that, we should let Facebook censor whatever they want or whatever, because I think that is inherently really dangerous as well. I just think that one of the issues is there's so little critical thinking that's happening. And part of what is contributing to that is like the structure of journalism with online journalism and so many articles being available for free. The free ones are spun oftentimes as clickbait. And so they want the most sensationalized headline that they can get. And if this is going to get a bunch of people to click on it and they can sell, they can get more hits for their ads or whatever their structure is, they're going to spin things even if they know that it's false.
But would you say that Fox News and CNN and MSNBC do the exact same thing?
I think to differing degrees. I definitely see that the most strongly out of the three that you mentioned. I see that the most strongly with Fox News, where they literally report on things that are just downright false.
They do. That's true.
I would say that, CNN, NBC, all kinds of, even ABC, like they spin things that are skewed towards the left. And sometimes more towards the left than normal. You even see sometimes there are articles on NPR that are like definitely a little bit more left leaning. However, I feel like there's a lot more truth in those. And I'm not saying that just because I agree with it, because there are definitely things that I've seen from other news sources that are skewed to the left that I'm like, yeah, I mostly agree with your overarching idea, but like the way that you're writing this is not really reliable journalism.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's to the degree that it's being spun to the left or the right, or in the case of Fox News, hard right.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, I think they're all villains. They just play different villainous roles. I mean, Fox News, they make no qualms about what they are. They're like, we are Rupert Murdoch's wet dream. We are, like just fringe right wing. And that's just what we do. And everybody knows what that is.
Not everybody knows what that is.
Well, that's true.
I have
I
have immediate family members that watch Fox News, and they take every ounce of what's on Fox News as truth, and everything else is fake news.
Right.
And I think with like the rise of like this like e-free base of like Trump's supporters, I think most of them probably take Fox News as the one and only truth. And that's terrifying.
That's fair. Yeah. And that's true as well. But MSNBC and CNN, I think what they do is it's more like just all the things that they're not telling you. All the things that, none of them have reported on the protests, honestly, at least nothing that I've seen. They never tell you about what's really going on with the environment, because they're all, and in Fox News, of course, as well, it goes without saying with them, oil and gas advertises with them every third commercial. And, so it's like you just have this inherent problem when you have a media structure that is just allowed to be owned by corporate entities that pursue profit above all else. You're just going to have an inherently corporate media. I mean, that's why it's like, I mean, when you say like, oh, MSNBC, they skew left compared to Fox News, sure. But as far as actually being left, I mean, I don't think we really have that in the corporate media.
For sure. And I think part of that is so many of these major outlets are owned by just a handful of people.
Yeah. I mean, Comcast owns
Yeah.
MSNBC. So it's like, yeah, compared to Fox News,
Yeah.
you know, but they also, I mean, they have their own agenda, and their agenda is just anti-Trump catnip.
Yeah.
That doesn't really help the conversation. Like, it's just, I mean, it's just a game for everyone involved. When Obama was president, because there was a Democrat in the White House, Sean Hannity was the #1 personality because they needed anti-Obama catnip. Now Trump is president and Rachel Maddow is the #1 personality because people need their anti-Trump catnip. When in reality, you know, these are all symptoms of a much bigger systemic disease. That is, we have a political structure that is just completely owned by the donor class. And it's set up so that we don't have any breathing room. I mean, it's just set up that way. This is by design. It's by design that right now we have two choices between a right-wing plutocrat who's been on the wrong side of pretty much everything for 40 years and then Donald Trump on the other side. And those are your choices.
Yeah.
And have fun, America, and go back to bed.
Well, and that's the thing is, I mean, not just our media, but also our politicians, everyone has moved further to the right. And
it's nuts.
It's terrifying because it's like, we did this in 2016. We tried to, I mean, we as in like Democrats, like, I don't even know if I identify as like a Democrat. I think that's like our best shot right now, which is pathetic. I was telling someone the other day, it feels like, you know, it's like, I'm a pescatarian. Do I want to eat a shit sandwich or do I want to eat a roast beef sandwich? It's been in the back of the fridge for 7 months. Like,
that's a nice analogy. I like that.
I'll take my chances on the roast beef, but both of them sound pretty fucking disgusting. And so it's like, that's kind of what we had in 2016. Like, was Hillary a million times better than Trump? Yes. Was that bar really low? Yes. Was she still far too centrist for me? Absolutely. You know, like, she didn't really have progressive policies in terms of the environment, in terms of, you know, helping people of like varying socioeconomic levels. And there's just so much. And then here we are, it's like Groundhog's Day.
Yeah. Well, they're doing the exact same stuff. I mean, Hillary really scared me in a lot of other ways where it was like, she was incredibly hawkish to the point where you were like, okay, so if we have another 4 years of like people being asleep because they think, well, there's a Democrat in the White House, we're fine. Meanwhile, it's like, you know, that's what happened in the Obama years. People, oh, there's a Democrat in the White House, we're totally fine. Meanwhile, here he is running out of bombs, making the Bush tax cuts permanent, doing all these atrocious things in the housing market, bailing out Wall Street, forgetting about Main Street. You know, and there were some things to smile about socially. And what, you know, I was out celebrating in the streets when gay marriage was given by the courts. I was out celebrating when he finally did the right thing about net neutrality at the 11th hour. But, you know, there were still all these, you know, the Bush administration basically put imperialism on autopilot. And Obama was like, cool. And now Trump's like, cool. And they want someone else, whether it's Trump or Biden, to also be cool. And then it's like, you see how this bleeds into, this is why we don't have universal health care. This is why we don't have all these other things. And we're just behaving like this atrocious empire. And that's why when you have a pandemic, you see what happens. Like look at what other countries are doing compared to us. And it's like, because, well, this system isn't set up to take care of its people. It's not a priority. It's not even an afterthought.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, as things have moved further to the right, it's like people at the top can easily say, oh, pull yourselves up by your bootstraps. It's like some people have no bootstraps to pull themselves up by.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
And especially when you add, you know, the elements of like systemic racism for different groups of people, when you add systemic homophobia and transphobia to all of these things, it's like you're adding all of these extra barriers and all of this weight down on people that they can't get out of. And, you know, we have like poverty set up as like a cycle to keep people in poverty. And when you have these, you know, think about like the last Democrats that have actually won these elections. They've always run as reformers of like, we can do better. We can do these different things. And you've got Obama definitely had some problems in his presidency, was also working with basically Republican House and Senate. And you have Clinton obviously did some really awful things to contribute towards this systemic racism issues and mass incarceration, but also ran as a reformer. We've got Jimmy Carter, who, oh my God, can you imagine? Jimmy Carter was like more progressive in a lot of ways than what we've seen in the last 3 decades of
he was the closest thing, and he really wasn't all that progressive. I mean, now what he has done in like service after that, I applaud the guy, you know, like building houses, helping poor people. I applaud him for that. But yeah, politically, I mean, he certainly was no Reagan at all, but he sort of started like he didn't make it more difficult for Reagan to play that tune.
Yeah.
Like he did his part, and he's the closest thing to a progressive we've had in the White House.
Totally. Isn't that
recent history, which it's beyond crazy. I mean, and in other countries, I mean, he wouldn't even be really considered a centrist in a lot of other countries. But like here, it's like, it's our Overton window. I mean, our Overton window is so far to the freaking right, they had to buy a new camera to zoom out far enough. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I say this, I'm like, look, you know, they have their problems over in England right now, like a lot of them. But the Democratic Party is still, in a lot of ways, to the right of the freaking Tories. Yeah. Like, we're to the right of their right-wing party.
Yeah.
I think we need a whole new party.
Yeah.
I just think like we just need, and I know that's like, for a lot of people, and we talk about it a lot on the show, but for a lot of general people, that's so hard to wrap their heads around. And I get that, you know, you came up in this 2-party duopoly. It's what you know. And I'm part of that too. But, you know, it was a 6-year transitionary period when the Republicans became the Republicans. And a lot of things in history mirrored when that happened. People were very disenfranchised with the options they had. There were all these kind of fringe movements going on the outside that wanted to be a different political vehicle. Well, they eventually all kind of merged and became what we know as the Republicans today. They became the Republicans. I feel like we're in the moment in history where we need that to happen again. And we're about 3 or 4 years behind schedule, because we really should have started building it in 2017, and we just weren't able. You know, like Bernie said no. Every other politician who was asked said no. And, you know, I've gotten to the point, you know, you use the word reformer, which I appreciate a lot, because I always say, you know, in political office, the best thing you can hope for is a reformer. And you want that reformer to listen to the revolutionaries. And the revolutionaries are the intellectuals and the authors and the poets and the policy idea people and the musicians and the comedians and the writers. And they kind of really push things further. And when you ask, and the activists, right, and the union leaders, and well, in some cases, I mean, some union leaders are corrupt, but, you know, that's a different story for a different day. But like, they kind of steer the ship, and hopefully the reformer listens to them. That's what happened with FDR. FDR was a reformer who listened to the revolutionaries, because he knew if he didn't, the country was going to be in a whole lot of trouble. So we need that to happen again. And when you ask a politician to be a revolutionary, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. It never. I mean, at least I'm sure there's exceptions around the world and stuff like that. I mean, you know, like even like someone like a Nelson Mandela comes to mind. But as far as contemporary United States politics is concerned, when you ask that politician to be a revolutionary, it's not going to work. We tried it. It didn't work. It's not going to work. You know, it needs to be a mass movement of people. But man, That's maybe next week we'll get to that. That's a big that's a tall glass of water for today, I feel like.
It is. Yeah. And I think that right now we're starting to catch up for that transformation within progressives. And I'm just going to use a progressive base rather than Democrats, because
Sure.
I feel like Democrat has gained so many negative connotations, particularly through 2016.
Well, deservedly so.
For sure.
Yeah.
For
I mean,
sure.
I don't know what your personal take is, but the way I like to describe it to people is by 2016, all of my worst suspicions were confirmed. Like
Yeah.
everything, because I never, and I'm sure you felt this way too. I never felt like my home is the Democratic Party, but I
Yeah.
felt like, well, I'm given these two choices. Neither one really speaks to my political leanings necessarily, but this neo-fascist experiment over here certainly isn't for me. And this other party seems to be more receptive to people like me. There's a few actual progressive who have broken through the mold, the Dennis Kuciniches of the world, the Mike Ravells of the world, the Jim McDermotts of the world. So I guess this is kind of where I'm supposed to be. And then 2016, that mask was off. And it's like, actually, if you're a lefty, they'd rather work with people to their right than you.
Yeah.
You're a complete undesirable, and they want to do everything they can. And there's some progressives trying to break in, but their first priority is making sure those progressives don't break in. I mean, as far as 2020 is concerned, the Democratic Party has already won as far as their standard is, because their first goal was, let's make sure a progressive isn't the nominee. And once we do that, maybe we'll beat Trump, maybe we won't. It's an afterthought.
Which is totally crazy.
Yeah.
Totally crazy.
It's a disaster.
The thing is, like, with Biden, he was trailing in the polls so horribly. And part of the nature of the political game of getting elected and, getting delegate counts and the Electoral College and all of these different things, there was no way that Biden was going to win until the eve of Super Tuesday, when we saw like half the field of candidates just like drop out overnight.
And they all endorsed him. And then the media propagated this fake Joementum thing, which wasn't real. And it was fake. It was just completely fake.
Yeah. And I think, there's so many layers to like, what game are we playing and who's making the rules? Yes. And how do we manipulate public perception? And what I was saying of like, I think the time is right for this transformation is like, have you seen the public perception of like the Black Lives Matter movement? How like very sharply, like very recently, we had a very sharp turn of like, all of a sudden it's become very apparent. But the thing is, how many Black people did it take to be like their murder shown all over the internet, and for the entire world to have this uprising and uproar over that? And it's like, Black Lives Matter is not new. It's been happening for over 400 years, and it was just 2006 that there was like a name for it, as like a hashtag and the name for like the movement that Patrice started. But like, this is not new. And it was just in the last couple of years that it's just like totally swung in favor. And so I think people are starting to recognize like, hey, there are problems. We do need to make change. And I think once the Democratic establishment recognizes people actually want to see change, I think I cannot wait for AOC to run for president and watch people's heads spin, like Democrat and Republican heads.
Well, when is she even? She's like 28, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so it's, I don't think we can wait that long.
I
know. You're making me feel like the Debbie Downer here, but I'm sorry to be that guy, but I don't think we can. I mean, I think the one, and I'm actually a very optimistic guy in so many ways, but my optimism is not very much entrenched in electoral politics. I'm more cynical towards electoral politics than I ever have been. And for good reason. I mean, part of it is like, just in my life in the past 3 years, I've had more peaks under the hood than I've ever wanted to have in my lifetime. And I don't, a lot of times when I meet a politician, I'm very off put by it. I don't want to vote for them ever. Not all the time. There's exceptions to that where I've met somebody and I'm like, I feel like you're genuinely trying to do the right thing and I like you. But it's like, that world is, we're both in show business. That world is shadier than show business on its best day. On show business's worst day, it's still just a shadier thing. But where I have a lot of optimism is, these protests thus far have accomplished more than 10 years of pleading with politicians in the past couple of weeks. And there's still a long, long way to go. Don't get me wrong. But, there have been some concessions as a result of people just saying we're fed up and we're not going to take it anymore. So this is showing you, well, what works? Well, it works when people just say we've had enough and we're not going to continue your machine anymore. That's why it's like the thing I am most excited about is not, a politician. It's the idea of a general strike.
Totally. And, I think one of the problems with the last, basically 400 years is people of color have been told like, oh, you have to play nice to make changes, and then even when they were playing nice, like Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated and, Malcolm X was talking about the hate that hate produced. And it's like, he was assassinated and so many of the leaders of the civil rights movement in like the 70s, 60s and 70s were lost, whether they were killed, whether they, fled to Cuba or whatever. It's like they were lost. And I think the really powerful thing about the Black Lives Matter movement is like, there's leadership across the board and people are saying like, no, we're not going to play nice. We're not going to follow the rules because when we play nice, nothing happens, nothing changes. And it's been making people uncomfortable. And that's what needs to happen is like white people and, whoever's in power needs to be uncomfortable. And people of color need to be the ones calling the shots. Like, this is what needs to happen. Because I think in the past, it's been people of power being white, being like, oh, sure, we'll take care of it. We'll do what we think is going to work. That doesn't work, because you're looking at it from a white perspective. And that's why we need more diversity in who's calling the shots and who are we actually listening to?
Well, and then this kind of goes into, the system as a whole. MLK, when he really started speaking up against capitalism, and those are the things that he said that you and I were not taught in school, that people were not taught in school. And he's saying that stuff and he's drawing the connection to the economic situation in the world. And he had not just Black people listening to him, but white people listening to him, all kinds of different. When you see footage from like Fred Hampton, for instance, like when Fred Hampton would speak, that audience was everybody. There was everybody in that audience listening to this guy who, by the way, 21 years old, Fred Hampton was. And he's drawing these connections where it's like, look, it's the ruling class against us. And they want us to be against each other. They want black people and white people to be against each other so that they can continue to kind of pull the puppet strings. And we need to stand together and say, no, thank you. We're not doing this. We're not playing your game. So they shot Fred Hampton when he was 21. They were like, we got to get rid of this guy. MLK, when he really started making these bigger connections, that's when they were like, we got to get rid of this dude. But now what you have a whole generation of people, the generation after us, the Zoomers. Does anyone call them that? Is that a thing? Do people say Zoomer?
I saw that in an article and I was like, oh, is that people who use Zoom? But yeah, like from the article,
but I just said it.
From the article about like the K-pop stars and like getting the Trump tickets or whatever for Tulsa, I was like,
he still had a shitty attendance, by the way. It's not like they made the shitty attendance. He had the shitty attendance anyway.
Yeah.
They just, like got his hopes up.
Yeah,
so
totally.
He was pissed off about it, but he still would have had that shitty attendance.
Yeah. Which is hilarious.
Is that like, let me tell you about the Zoomers, Riley. They're gonna save us all. The Zoomers are gonna save us.
Oh my God.
Where can people go to learn more about you?
I have 2 websites. One is my personal one, which is RileyAnnSound.com. And one specifically for my band is thecatcallsband.com.
And go to the catcallsband.com and check out I Get High. That's the song of the day.
Yeah,
awesome
it's also on
rock tune.
It's on Spotify. It's on, I don't know, wherever else you can stream music.
Are you playing the leads on that? Is that you?
No, that's not me.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Some cool shredding.
Yeah, it's super fun. I wrote that song as like I sat down one day, I was like, I need to write a song. I haven't written a song in a while. I'm just gonna crank out like a 12-bar blues. And like, half an hour later, like I basically had the bones to that song, and I workshopped it with my bandmates and turned it into that. So it was a lot of fun.
Brilliant. Guys, thank you Riley. Thank you so much for joining me. Awesome to talk to you. Been wanting to do this for a long time. We've been talking about doing an episode together. So thank you for joining me. Everyone out there, you know the drill. We'll be back. We'll be in and out this week. So by the way, I have to make this announcement. Graham and I are doing a Zoom show this Saturday. This Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific time. We're doing another Zoom show. Venmo Graham at Graham-Elwood. We'll be tweeting more about it. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, and I'll post something in the YouTube community as well. We're doing a Zoom show this Saturday, and you should be there. It's on Zoom. It's fun. It's a good time because who knows when we'll be able to tour again. But hopefully, when it's safe, we'll be back. You guys know the drill. When it's safe, we'll be back. We'll be making up all the cities that we've been missing. But we will be on Zoom Saturday night. In the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy says meow. I say peace.